Welcome to SRG Insights, where we answer your questions about sales, sales management, and sales training. Today's question has to do with why most product demos miss the mark and what you can do to improve your chances of success. And what I mean by that is most people, I think, have been in those demos where they seem to go on and on about very detailed specifications and features that don't necessarily address our need. And I think what's most important is when we're providing that demo, we're really telling a story about how our particular offering is going to solve a problem or fix a situation or make their situation better. So we often get lost in those features and those acronyms and bogged down in the details. And what we miss is the opportunity to really have a discussion about how we can help improve their situation. So I think one of the key objectives is to find out the why. Find out what they're trying to accomplish and where they are in their buying journey. Oftentimes we're digging in and diving into those details before we really understand, is the customer just kicking the tires? Are they just trying to learn about what options are available? Or in fact, are they pretty far along in their buying journey and they really understand exactly what they're looking for? So I think we need to understand where they are and align with that so that we can position our demo appropriately. I also think the discovery meeting is really critical to a successful demo. And if it's a short sales cycle, that may even happen in the very same meeting, but we're spending the first maybe 15 minutes to a half hour really understanding their situation before we even break open or get into the demo. Ideally, we've had that discovery meeting first. We've learned about their business problem. We've learned about their specific requirements, and we're using the beginning of the meeting to recap and confirm their priorities before we go into the demo. And in fact, we want to make sure they have a chance to offer feedback and confirm that that is the problem that we're trying to solve before we go into a demo that addresses a need that maybe they don't even have or they don't fully understand. So we should only then focus the demo on those features and use cases that really solve their situation. And, there'll be time for diving into more technical details later, or maybe a follow-up, which is actually a good thing. But we really want to spend our time telling that story of how we're uniquely positioned to help improve their situation. Another problem that I think people run into is they don't consider the audience. So is this a technical buyer or somebody who's very close to the specifications and the requirements and in fact will be using the product themselves? Or maybe it's a manager who is responsible for making that procurement or managing that overall program? Or is it an executive who's really concerned about how this is going to provide a return on investment or help with their strategic objectives? I think oftentimes we're speaking to a technical solution and we miss the mark when we're getting to those more manager or executive buyers. The other offering or suggestion I'd make is to really consider, have we practiced? Is the technology smoothed out? Do we really understand all the features? Things will go wrong and we don't have to apologize for those. In fact, often it's better not to call attention to those because the customer may not even realize if something's gone amiss. But we want to be very, very comfortable in the environment. So the final piece I'll cover is just in structuring the demo, and this is very consistent with how we suggest running a sales presentation, is it should really be in 4 parts. It should start, as I mentioned, with recapping their needs and their requirements. So here's our understanding. Is that accurate? We then provide the solution and the demo, and there we want to start with an orientation at a very high level. Here's what it is. Now here's how it solves your problem. And the more we can customize that to their specific situation and even providing their logo or their use cases or referring to their specific situation and customers, so much the better. The third component is around differentiation. So why is this relevant to them? Why are we best suited to solve their problem? And how are we different maybe than their competition? And we can bring that in. And the final is the proof. So we want to be able to tell stories and provide data and research that shows why we're the best solution and why we've done this in a similar fashion, maybe for clients in their industry or clients with similar situations. The final piece would really be around asking for feedback throughout, making sure we're confirming that we're on track, that they understand, and then really testing the waters. Do they see any gaps? How do we measure up with some of the other options that they're considering? I think that'll give us an idea of if we're in alignment with their solution and whether it's worth continuing forward after the demo. I think we often miss the opportunity to ask those questions that get feedback from the customer and even may raise objections that they're concerned about. Because an objection is a great way of clarifying and understanding where they are. And as we talk about in our objection handling, we want to acknowledge that there's a question or a concern. We want to clarify what's behind that or what the issue is. We then want to address it and confirm that they understand or that we've solved that problem. And I think by doing that, we can really ensure that we understand if we're on track, if we're a good fit, and we're able to move forward. So again, I think the purpose and the process of going through a demo should really be about confirming that we understand the problem and then showing how we can solve that problem and telling a story that resonates with their situation and how we can help. And I think if we do that, we'll get a lot further away from showing every feature that may be very boring and irrelevant to the customer, and much more aligned with helping them as a consultant and a trusted advisor, which ultimately is what's going to move that deal forward.